Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome back, everyone.
Hello.
Coming off of a very, very long week. My wife and I just had a baby, so we're just kind of getting settled back in here. So forgive me if I feel like, or I seem a little bit low energy right now, but I really have not been sleeping that much. So that's the reason why I'm going to fall asleep here.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So Angel and I were talking before this call about a couple different things, but something that we really wanted to talk about is the idea of how to form deeper connections with your leads and with clients and just people in your life in general. And by forming deeper connections with people, just overall having a better relationship, building more trust with people, building more rapport. And so just to kind of kick it off, what we were talking about before is I know it can be a little bit awkward for people. How do I do that? You know, how do I get people to know me, like me, trust me, feel comfortable buying from me, or really have a good experience when they work with my company and want to refer me to other people. And again, we'll probably get into just relationships in general. And I promise, like I always say, I'm going to try my best not to give relationship advice here. Maybe we'll have to start a different podcast for that where people can write in and I'll give my horrible relationship advice. But yeah, anyway, so, Angel, with that being said, why don't you talk a little bit about what we were talking about before, just to kind of kick off this call?
Yeah, like you said, building stronger relationships or just connections with people in general can go a lot of different ways. But in this case, my mind goes straight towards connecting with people in a stronger way in consultations, just because I feel like that in itself can get overlooked so much. So that's, I think, why my mind goes there right away.
Mhm.
And like you said, like how are we going to get people to really know us and like us and trust us, especially when you are trying to sell such big ticketed products or
Yeah.
prices. So again, I think like the consultation is super duper important, but even like backing up a little bit, that first conversation that you have with people on the phone, whether it's a 5-minute phone call or a 10-minute phone call prior to scheduling the consultation, even that in itself is super important because for the consultation, for those of you who are doing in-home consultations, your client is allowing you into their home, into their personal space, in a situation where they might feel vulnerable, especially if they're dealing with, a lot of issues with their dog. And like I say all the time, majority of the time that people are reaching out to you, it's because they've reached like their breaking point with their dog pretty much. Something has happened to, what's the saying? Break the camel's back.
It's the straw that broke the camel's back. Is that
Yeah,
on the list, by the way, or no?
it's not.
Okay, add it to the list.
But now I'm officially using it.
See, like you hang around me long enough, you just start like talking like a 90-year-old man, you know?
Yeah, so there was a
What's
straw.
good for the goose isn't always good for the gander. Is that another one?
I don't know. That's probably on part two.
Sorry, I had to
Um,
throw that one there.
but yes, something has happened to make them get to their breaking point to call you. So even that initial phone conversation where you're trying to get them to schedule an in-person consultation and go into their, private living quarters and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, like they have to trust you in some way. They have to get excited to meet you. They have to get excited to potentially start training with you. And this can be beneficial in other ways too, like cutting down on people canceling the consultation before it happens, or people, maybe scheduling consults with other businesses and then just automatically signing up with them before your consult even happens. So that process and that like relationship building and, forming a connection with that client literally starts the moment that you get that phone call. And I feel like that is so overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just talking to one of our other clients, Bethany, the other day. Shout out to Bethany. She's killing it in her business. But she was saying to me they were working on just the little nuances of how to answer calls and how to interact with clients like the first time you speak with them. And she was really impressed by somebody who she's actually hiring when she went to get something, I think like some service done on her car. And this guy was working for that company. And she called and he answered the phone. He was just bright and happy and smiling through the phone. And you could just right out the gate feel his energy. And, it's interesting that she noticed that because I think this is a really important thing for business owners to do is look at other businesses around you and notice the things that they do really well and things that like really turn you off, and make sure that you're either doing that stuff and implementing that stuff in your business or not doing that in your business. It's really important to go through life like that, I think, and be able to look at things, perceive things through a buyer perspective, and then be like, is this something that would be good for us to implement? But that's just kind of a side tangent. But anyway, Bethany was talking about how the person who answered the phone again was just like bright, smiling, happy, all that stuff, and introduced himself by name, had like a little bit of a tagline for the business, right away got into like, how can we help you? Got, her name and was calling her by her name. And what I said to her, I was like, there's not a million different things. I mean, I guess there are if you really want to get granular, but there's only a certain amount of ways you can really answer the phone and do it. And what it really comes down to is just doing it well. And as they say, like first impressions are everything. So, something that I always think about is, I know I've said this in other calls we've done. When we first started working with people, what I would notice a lot of is people answering a lead when they would come in and they'd be like, they'd wait for it to ring 4 times and then they would be like, hello, when they answer it. And it's like, dude, that person, you just right out the gate made yourself seem like unprofessional. So answer the phone, say your name, the name of the company, how can we help you, get their name. And it's just going to right out the gate start just such a better connection there. Another thing I always think about is, again, get their name and call them by their name. Weave that into the conversation. It's a big ego hit for people. I mean, myself included. If you feel like somebody doesn't know your name, that's one of the most important ways that we get to know somebody is like, do you even know my name? You wouldn't say you have any sort of relationships with somebody if you don't know their name or they don't know your name. So get their name right out the gate, weave that into the conversation. That's going to be the first step in making people feel like you actually know them. So is there anything else, Angel, you would add to that before we kind of get off into like the other, like the meat and potatoes of this too, as far as just like answering calls goes and stuff like that?
As far as just answering calls, no, I think you pretty much hit it all.
Pretty much beat that dead horse already. So yeah. So with that being said, the reason that this came up in conversation is Angel and I were talking about before, talking about the idea of how to connect with people, have good conversation with people. And what I've noticed throughout my life is people have told me like, you're really good at talking to people, right? And there's no doubt that I can really talk. Like if someone's like talking to a rock, I can do it. I could talk to a brick wall if I really needed to. But I think that the number one thing that I realized from a pretty young age is people really like to talk about themselves when you get them talking about things that they're interested in. It can't just be, tell me about something really boring about yourself. Like no one wants to talk about that. But if you can find a way to get underneath the armor a little bit and get people talking about something that they're interested in, about their life, people will go on for hours about it. And as soon as I can get somebody to do that and really start talking about themselves and sharing information about themselves, I know that we're going to form a connection. And I know that using sales as an example, the sale is going to become so much easier. So with that being said, Angel, why don't you talk about that a little bit and like your experience with that?
Yeah, so I will say like in my experience when as a trainer and doing sales and stuff like that, like I really formed great relationships with my clients. Like most of them I would consider friends, and some of them would even, I think I've talked about this before, like try to invite me over for dinner and like get me gifts, even get my kids gifts and stuff like that. And I really take pride in that. Again, it all starts from the very, very beginning. But like you said, in the consultation, you're not there just to ask about their dog or just ask about what's going on with their dog. Like, I think it's super important in that conversation to also ask, more personal questions. It's still going to be helpful, from a training aspect, knowing what their lifestyle is like and the things that they do and stuff like that. But just to take it a step further and like even building some rapport as soon as you get into the house, maybe you see toys laying around and, oh, do you have kids? How old are they? And, bringing up stuff like that. And then getting into the actual consult, maybe even like going over like your programs and prices and stuff like that. I really like to, and I always tell our clients about this too, like I really like to make talking about the program a whole conversation in itself, not just by saying like, in this program, you're going to get this, this, and this, but I really like to incorporate a lot of their personal life in it.
Yeah.
One really good example is this one consult that I remember in particular. They had mentioned at some point during the consult that they had a baby on the way. We didn't really talk a whole lot about it. They didn't really have any concerns about the baby coming and the issues that they were having with their dog and stuff like that. So wasn't really a big part of the conversation. But when it came time to talking about the program, then I, started saying that, we can work on this command so that way, let's say you are laying the baby on the couch to change a diaper, you can utilize this and whatever. Maybe we can create boundaries around, they had like a pack and play and swing setup. And
Yeah.
I pointed those things out. And like, I think based on the behaviors that you're noticing in your dog right now, like we are going to have to create some boundaries around these things. So again, without them like really bringing those concerns forward, also not necessarily like I was trying to create these concerns for them, but I was just trying to like point out like personal things in their home that I was noticing that would be helpful
Yeah.
in the training process.
Yep.
But I really like to connect with people that way is like, and there's a difference between, crossing the line and like straight up talking about something that
All
they
right, give us an example.
very,
What is crossing the line?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Um,
you know it when you see it, It's like you know when you've gone too far.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of tell when there's like certain things that maybe people don't want to talk about. Maybe you ask a question and they just like breeze right over it. Then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like I won't ask about
Yeah.
that again. But like I said, when it comes to like kids, like you obviously see kid things laying around. I'd say that's a safe question to ask about.
Yeah.
Or, if you see grandma walk across the room and you say hi to her, then you can ask like, oh, uh,
Yeah.
who is that? Ask in a kind way. Do they
Who
live
the
with
hell is
you?
that?
Who is this old person in your house? And like stuff like that too, the dog being like super rambunctious around grandma, so she never really gets to hang out in the living room.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, that like you can point out and like
Yep.
really incorporate their personal life into what it is that you can help with training wise.
100%. Yeah, making it applicable to them. I think that's the most important thing. And without getting totally off topic here, just to touch on what you're saying, I think this is exactly what I see with a lot of people when it comes to selling the off leash programs and having a hard time with that. Is they frame it a lot of times in this way of, do you like to take your dog hiking or to the beach? That'd be a great opportunity to like do an off leash program. It's like not everybody does that stuff, So how do you make that program more applicable to the everyday person? And a good example of that could be, do you live in the Northeast, or does it get cold in the wintertime? Do you like just letting your dog off leash in the backyard at 10 o'clock at night or something like that, to use the bathroom and then come back? Or do you have kids and you have your hands full and sometimes you just need to be able to tell your dog to hop up into the car or, recall them out of the bathroom when they're not supposed to be in there, whatever it may be. But don't focus on these like crazy things that some people do, and it's a small percentage of the population. Frame it in a way that everybody should be able to communicate with their dog off leash, because there's always scenarios. Your dog's off leash 90% of the time. But going back to what I was talking about before, the most important takeaway here that I think I want to really get across is whenever I am on a sales call and I find myself doing a lot of the talking and carrying the conversation, I just know that there's a less likelihood that somebody's going to buy or somebody's going to be really excited about it. when I can do it the other way around, where I get them to talk by asking a lot of really good questions, and not to pat myself on the back, but I just thought of it this way one time, and I think it's true. It's like if you're an attorney in a courtroom, right, and you're cross-examining somebody, and that's obviously not what we're doing with our leads, right? We're not trying to get them to confess to a murder back in like 1987 or something like that, but we want to kind of lead the conversation and know the questions that we want to ask that are going to get the answer that we want to hear, right? Because if you
Mhm.
can get people to admit certain things or say certain things out loud, that's what self-selling is all about. Because then they start connecting the dots and they feel like they're the one connecting the dots instead of you telling them. Nobody likes to be told what their problems are. They kind of want to tell you, and then
Yeah.
you create a program around that, and they feel like they were heavily involved in the decision making, as far as what program would be best for them. So I think that all starts with asking the right questions. And this is on a couple different planes here. So asking the right questions, leading them to decide, what's going on with my dog's behavior that I really want to get fixed. But again, kind of what you were talking about before, getting personal with people and getting them to talk to you about their life in general and their kids. And if you can relate to them on that, like every parent talks about their kids, and every parent can kind of relate over like the little things that kids do that, are a little bit quirky or whatever, that like parents kind of, maybe roll their eyes at or can kind of laugh at together and stuff like that. It's just a great place to connect. But find something that you can connect on with people. I know every time I ever talk to somebody about sales, I talk about this stuff. And to new people or people that are new to sales, I can see them almost kind of scratching their head like, why is this dude talking about this? It seems so unrelated. But what the longer and longer I get into this and sell to people and help people with sales and do a ton of sales coaching, I always think about the saying that's relational over transactional. If you just make it transactional, people are going to feel that. If they feel like they're in a relationship with you and a friendship and stuff, it just makes closing it so much easier. It doesn't even, I don't feel like using the word closing it does it justice. It's just they want to work with you. And that's when you'll start hearing people say, like, I don't have the money right now, but I'm going to find a way to do this. Like, you're going to be our person. And those people do come back and buy from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take a step back a little bit to when you were talking about like off-leash programs, for instance, like not
Cool.
focusing on like, you know, do you take your dog hiking? Great, we can do this off-leash program. Or do you like to go running with your dog off-leash but can't? That
Yeah.
is another really great example of really like digging and asking a lot of questions, is because like aside from building a connection, like this is going to help with, steering them not only into the correct program, but into a higher ticketed program. Like those
Yeah.
are all things that I like really, really um pay attention to in a consultation, because I would say most of the time people aren't going to flat out say, I want an off-leash trained dog.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's like you having to read them and how their family is, what their lifestyle is like, their routine and all that kind of stuff. So like you mentioned, if it's someone who has um a ton of kids, and they bring up maybe a story about, getting the dog into the car and the dog darted off. Well, then I'm going to say like, okay, what's generally your routine? Like, do you get the dog into the car and then kennel him and then get the kids in the car? Like, that's kind of what I'm referring to, is I will ask like those small details in
Yeah.
order to get like the full story as to how the dog ended up jumping out of the car and running off. Things like
Yeah.
that, or pretty much anything that tells me an off leash, any type of off leash reliability or like an off leash recall is going to be super helpful or super important for this family. And like you said, dogs are off leash like 90% of the time. And I always said that in my consultations is, especially if they were between like a shorter on-leash program and an off-leash program, is I would say if there is at any point you want any off-leash reliability with your dog, the off-leash program is the way to go, because your dog is off-leash like 90% of the time. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So even if you're hanging out in the house and maybe you're in the living room or the dining room and you have clear view of the kitchen and your dog just jumps up on the counter and grabs a steak, they're off leash and you can't really correct that unless you are either right there or you have a really long leash on your dog at all times, which people don't. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I don't want to get like too off topic with that, but I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand because you are, building a better connection with these people. You're getting them to talk more by asking those little questions and details and like, okay, tell me more about that. Like, what is your entire routine when your husband or your wife and your kids are getting ready to go somewhere with the dog? What does that look
Yeah.
like, leaving the house? And like really getting them to talk and like tell you things in detail.
Yeah, the more detailed you can be with people, the more um just specific and just know specific scenarios about their life and what they do, the better you can really craft something that feels like it's specifically addressing their issues instead of just like the cookie cutter, hey, here's this basic obedience program. Do you want like that's where I see people get into trouble is they're
Yeah.
like, well, I told them all the things that they would get in it. And I always think, yeah, that program would fix their issues and they'd probably be really happy if they did it. You just did a really poor job of positioning it, right? Because
Mm.
it's not about just a list of commands that the dog is going to learn. What it's about is how that how those commands are going to positively impact their life and eliminate the issues that they're having. And I know that may seem like a little bit nuanced and okay, it's kind of the same thing, but if you really sit and think on that, it's like focus on the result that somebody's going to get and the level of joy and happiness and relief that they're going to get from the program, not the individual, hey, we're going to teach your dog how to like sit or stay in their bed or something like that.
Yeah, and I think also it helps people see like how like deep training can really get. And like like you said, it's not just about like we're going to teach your dog to sit and down and place,
Yep.
but like asking those specific details and not that you have to get like so granular and specific about like the science behind training. But sometimes people, might question like, why are you asking me that question? Like, why does that matter? But then when
Yeah.
you find out the answer to that question and you can help explain like, okay, now it's making sense. Like I can see why your dog might be doing this behavior because you just told me that, this, and this happens, or maybe, the sequence happens before you notice like this big blowout in your dog. So you're kind of helping them, see things a little bit deeper into maybe their dog's behavior or the specific training you're going to be doing to help without, again, not getting like super scientific and boring them to death with that.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. But just to kind of put a final cap on this conversation, I want to go back to like the original topic at hand, right? So I think this is applicable for everything in life, whether you're going into a consultation for dog training or you're going into a cocktail party or something like that, and you just feel like a little bit awkward and you're feeling a little bit out of place and don't know how to start a conversation with somebody. First off, keep in mind that's how most people are feeling. The other person's probably feeling the same exact way as you as well. So if you can just lead with the littlest bit of confidence and feeling like showing them or pretending like you know what you do, like that goes a long way. And again, if you can get people talking about themselves, like before you know it, you'll find yourself in a 45-minute long conversation and they'll be telling you about like their deepest, darkest like secrets from their childhood or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not that we're doing this to be manipulative or to like get info on somebody. I think the most important thing is really taking a genuine interest in people. Like I really like people. I found that about myself. I love hearing about people. I love helping people, all that stuff. And so if you can do that and genuinely ask questions and find places where you can learn about people because it's gonna be good for the both of you, do that. Because at the end of the day, what this is all about, guys, is your mission inside of your business. I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. Our mission in our business is to help as many dog trainers as we possibly can. Right. And I would think for most of you listening to this, like your goal in your business is to help as many dog owners and as many dogs as you can. Right. And so what I always think about is if I don't get better at this little stuff and find a way to sign up more clients, I'm actually doing a massive disservice to a lot of people because I know that we can help people if we get connected with the right person and they're willing to like implement the things that we suggest and you know uh, implement the marketing that we put into place and stuff. People are going to have success, and it can be really business changing and life changing stuff. So same thing for you guys. If you're finding a lot of people that are not signing up with you and you feel like you're just a little bit lacking in the area of sales and connecting with people, try and implement some of this stuff because at the end of the day, if it can help you help more people then and help more dogs, then you are by definition, helping, as corny as it sounds, like helping the world. You're helping a lot of people with a lot of things that they're struggling with. So,
Yeah,
with that
absolutely.
being said, Angel, what were you going to say before I rudely cut you off there?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. All right, well, listen, we'll wrap it up here. But as always, I mean, if you guys are getting any value out of this, make sure to drop a comment down below in the comment section with any questions you might have or topics you want for us to cover. It could be literally anything. We love hearing from you guys and different things that you guys are taking away from this that you find helpful or, just anything that you would want to hear more about. So, with that being said, we're going to wrap it up here. Make sure to like the video, share it with a friend if you know anybody, and we'll see you guys very soon in the next one. See you guys.
Hi, guys.